Welcome, and thank you for tuning into our program. The following presentation has no video and is intended to be listened to and enjoyed without the need to actually watch anything. So kick back and relax, or continue whatever you are doing and just enjoy listening to our story. New Year's Eve, 1958. I'm sitting in my office, pouring a glass of bourbon on this chilly December evening, wondering how I ended up becoming a private investigator. Leaning back in my wooden chair, behind my second-hand, battle-scarred wooden desk, stacked to overflowing with files, I looked around my office. It was a quiet evening. The faucet in the background sadly dripping behind me, the Windsor mantel clock proudly ticking the time on top of the old oak file cabinet. I have a view of a familiar street through a too-dirty window. The certificates on the walls, a coat tree somberly holding my coat and well-worn fedora, just waiting to hand them over as I go out the door. As with most quiet evenings, I sit and I think. I've had my own business for a year or so now. What were the life experiences that got me here? I had just turned 18. Being a rebellious teen, I took this opportunity to move out and be on my own. After a few months of knocking around the city looking for work, grabbing an odd job here and there, but with the post-war employment situation, it wasn't easy. The whole first year on my own was not easy. The second year didn't get any better. I turned to hustling pool at Jimmy's bar and a few less than honorable pursuits. I had more than a couple of brushes with the law, and it was one of these instances when I was befriended by a cop. He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. He steered me a path, told me to straighten up and fly right. And lo and behold, that life-changing day happened. It was my 20th birthday. With a recommendation from the officer in hand, I signed up and was accepted into the police academy. The year was 1948. I had a lot to learn from the academy. It was a whole different world than I was used to. The physical training and the structured regiment were hard to conform to in the beginning, but I knuckled down and worked hard. After 5 months, in the spring of '49, I hit the streets as a rookie cop in a crisp new uniform with a shiny new .38. This is when I met Joe. He was a grizzled, ready-to-retire veteran of the force, but was too dedicated to his job to do so. He reined in my ego and showed me the ropes. Joe taught me the proper way to fill out paperwork, how to interact with the public. I had a few close calls, from almost falling out of a tree rescuing a kitten to a liquor store robbery gone bad. Joe was there, and I survived because of him. I couldn't believe that 1 year walking the beat with Joe went by so quickly. In 1950, Joe and I were issued our first patrol car. We cruised the district with Joe imparting his wisdom, and I was soaking it up like a sponge. Joe beamed with pride when a bit of the wisdom he taught me was put to practical use. The two of us were a great team. We dealt with lost kids, domestic disputes, and murder scenes and everything in between. We laughed, we cried. I shared the holidays with his family. We did it all. Joe's wife was a fantastic cook. Our precinct was a close-knit brotherhood with a vow to protect and serve. In the blink of an eye, it was 1954, and Joe finally retired. This was when I met Martin, my new partner, and a rookie. Now I know why Joe seemed to grow more gray hairs every day when he was with me. Marty and I hit it off on the right foot the first day. We really bonded as a team and became really good friends. We would go to Jimmy's bar after work, have a bite to eat, a beer, and a game of pool. There were a few times we would even go out on double dates. We really worked well together. Marty seemed to learn the ropes rather quickly. June 14th, 1956, a Saturday night, a date that I will never forget. The weather was a scorcher. It was hot, humid, and you were sweating in places you didn't tell people about. Even the nights hadn't cooled off for almost a week. This was when Marty and I got the call of a burglary in progress at a mom-and-pop hardware store. We pulled up to the store. There was distant rolling thunder and the sporadic lightning. You could just smell a storm coming in. It made us both uneasy. There were no lights on in the building, so we grabbed our flashlights. Marty took the rear entrance, and I took the front. We slowly searched aisle by aisle for the suspect. With only our flashlights and the now persistent lightning illuminating our way. And then it happened. Not sure to this day if it was Marty or the suspect that knocked over the display case. Shots rang out, and during a flash of lightning I saw Marty's body hit the floor. I fired my weapon in the direction of the muzzle flash. I heard a groan, and then a muffled thud of a body hitting the floor. I rushed over to Marty, then looked over at the suspect, jumped over and kicked his gun away. I checked. He was dead. I rushed back to Marty, rolled him over. He had blood oozing from his chest and fear in his eyes. I told him to hold on. I would be right back. I needed to go call for help. I told dispatch the situation, and they said help is on the way. I've trained for this type of situation, but when it's real, it's different. I ran back to Marty, pulled off my shirt, leaned Marty against me, and tried my best to slow the bleeding. As I held him, I wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't form in my mouth. I felt Marty's breathing getting weaker and weaker. I could hear the sirens, but they seemed so far away. With a quiet gasp and a twitch, he was gone. I gently closed his eyes with my hand, and I sat there holding him in my arms. I silently said goodbye to my friend, my partner, and my little brother. I promised myself that I would avenge my little brother's death any way I could. I buried myself deep into my duties. Anything that I could think of to keep me on the streets, helping those in need. Apprehending the criminals, putting them away, so they couldn't hurt others, the way they hurt my family and myself. The anger and resentment continued to well up in my soul, and the gap in the relationship with my parents was widening. It was your job to protect him, they would say. I was on the streets, or sitting at my desk filling out and filing reports, day and night, night and day. My lieutenant signed me up for a few courses so I could be promoted to detective. I remember his gruff voice. "You need something to do. Here, take these courses. Work on that promotion." In the autumn of '56, I was assigned a new partner, Detective Eddie, and a new job title. Eddie had more than a couple of years' experience in this area. We made a good team. I vowed to myself that I would not get emotionally close. There was no after-work beers, backyard barbecues. Work was work, and Eddie was my partner only. And Eddie understood that. I struggled along for about a year. I had seen criminals that I put behind bars, or tried to put behind bars, running the streets again. Not sure who was to blame for it. Was it the sleazy attorneys? Shady court dealings? I didn't know. But I know for sure, and I'll swear on my brother's grave, it was not shoddy police work. I don't know, but maybe I burned myself out. After almost 10 years of protecting and serving with the force, I needed a change. I did enjoy the detective side of working with the department, but that wasn't enough to make me stay. All I had to do was sign a paper and have it put on file. November 1957. I now had my private investigator's license, an office, and started my own business. I wanted to work alone on my own terms. I could still serve and help others without having a partner to worry about. And now here I am. I did a slow spin in my wooden office chair, sitting down the now empty glass on my well-worn desk next to my trusty 38 and the stack of files, looking at the office window that read, William Nichols, Private Investigator. I hope you enjoyed our story, and thank you for listening. Tune in next time for part 1 of a 3-part story titled Pennies from Heaven, a mystery story featuring William Nichols, Private Investigator. It's January 3rd, and an overcast, chilly Saturday morning. I decided to walk to work instead of driving today. My small apartment is only a few blocks from the office, and on the opposite side of the street. Next to my apartment building is a rooming house. Their blue vacancy sign glares into my window at night. The owners at the rooming house run a tight ship. It's clean and quiet, unless the owners are kicking someone out for not paying rent or for being a pig. I can't complain. It's not the bad side of town, but it's not the upper crust either. As I walk down the block, there's an elderly man sitting on a stoop with a sign that reads, I'm blind. He has a homemade knit blanket on his lap and a money can by his side.
Good morning, Billy.
Sonny, how do you always know it's me?
You have those old soft shoes, Billy, and you don't smell like smoke. So if you get new shoes, you be sure to let me know.
Sonny, I will be sure to do that. And here, have some change.
Thank you, Billy. I like change, because a sawbuck and $1 feel and sound the same to me.
Just a bit farther down the block, by the intersection where I cross the street to get to my office, there's a vendor named Frank. Him with his cart, he sells hot food and coffee. Billy, how about a hot coffee for this chilly morning? It's a good day to start putting all those files away. You know, the ones that are piling up on your desk. Or figure out who is in that fancy car that's been sitting outside your office. No one has gotten out. They've just been sitting there. Thanks, Frank. Keep that up and I might just have to hire you. No, thanks. I don't do filing and I don't do windows. And who would watch your office when you're not around? Here's some money for the coffee, Frank, and a tip. The driver must have been watching me, and with a tottering gait and as fast as his old bones could go, he opened the back door of the car. A gentleman who looked to be about 50 years old, wearing an upmarket dark coat, gray hat, and a scarf, and looked in my direction. Mr. Nichols, I need to speak with you. I'm Mr. Raymond Northcliffe. Let's go inside, Mr. Northcliffe. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and turned on the light. I asked if I could take his coat. He handed me his coat, hat, and scarf, and I hung them on the coat tree. Mr. Northcliffe took a disgusted look around my office, then had a seat in the chair by the front of my desk. I had decided to keep my coat and hat on. I felt the hug of my trusty 38 as I sat down behind my desk. This gentleman might be acting like he has money, but his suit has a few wear marks and could have used a good dry cleaning and a press. Before I could ask, he spoke. Mr. Nichols, you need to find my daughter. She's been kidnapped and is being held for a $50,000 ransom to be paid Tuesday the 6th. We have less than a week. The kidnappers will be calling the house Tuesday at 7 p.m. to tell me where to drop off the ransom money and make arrangement for my daughter's return. Less than a week is correct. I have 3 days. Mr. Northcliffe, when was she last seen? Well, she didn't show up for the New Year's Eve gathering at the manor. I told her it was necessary that she attend. There was going to be important business acquaintances she needed to be introduced to. So when did the kidnappers contact you, Mr. Northcliffe? Midnight, New Year's Eve. The kidnapper said, "Happy New Year's, Mr. Northcliffe. I have your daughter, and I want $50,000. I will contact you on this phone on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Now, no funny business and no coppers." And then he hung up. I would like to come over to the mansion, Mr. Northcliffe, and have a look around. That is fine, Mr. Nichols. And don't mind the appraisers. We are trying to come up with the money from the personal accounts and assets without taking that large of an amount of cash from our business. Here's the address. You can call the house and my driver will come and pick you up. Mr. Northcliffe, that won't be necessary. You need to read and sign this contract before I agree. I need $100 up front and $50 a day when services are rendered, with my expenses included in that amount. Fine. Fine, Mr. Nichols. Anything to get my daughter back without spending all of my fortune. After he'd signed the paperwork and paid my retainer, I walked out from behind my desk. I shook his hand and walked him to the door. I handed him his coat, hat, and his scarf. He didn't even bother putting them on. Walked out the door. I watched as his driver opened the car door. Mr. Northcliffe got in, and I watched them drive away. I walked over to my desk just in time to catch a stack of files that was about to fall off of it. I really should have drove to work today. When I'm done with my investigation out at the country manor, I need to get more filing cabinets. My New Year's resolution was get my office looking professional. It's late afternoon and I'm back at the office after going to the Northcliffe Manor. I was looking for evidence on the kidnapping of Mr. Northcliffe's daughter Penelope. I hang my coat and fedora on the coat tree, with my notes from my investigation in hand, waiting for my new-to-me filing cabinets to be delivered. I walked over to my desk, adjusted one of the mountains of files that are there. I removed my holster that holds my .38. I placed it on the one small area I have left on my desk, and kicked back in my wooden chair. I closed my eyes for a moment, going over what I had just witnessed at the Northcliffe's manor house. There were more than just appraisers there. It was a quiet estate sale. I did find 2 matching oak filing cabinets to match the one I have, and 2 nice matching wooden chairs. It was nice of them to deliver, too. I felt the money I spent on them was going to a good cause, to help get Penelope back. If I can't. I opened my eyes and went to my now filthy window. The delivery truck was just driving up, and they were starting to unload. I went to the door and opened it for them, all the while thinking to myself, something about this case just isn't right. Thank you for delivering those. Put the cabinets next to the other one, and if you would, the chairs can go over there. All the while I was keeping an eye on my .38 on the desk. I thanked the boys for the delivery and gave them a tip. Now I found myself pacing and thinking. There were only 3 staff members for that large house and grounds. The maid, who was also the cook, a driver, and a butler. The maid had mentioned that Mr. Northcliffe told her to pack 2 suitcases for Penelope, as she is going to take a vacation to help her deal with stress. The maid did as she was told and didn't ask any questions. That was New Year's Eve's morning. The butler and the driver had been out picking up a few items for the maid, so I didn't get to talk to them. Mr. Northcliffe was nowhere to be found while I was there. I found out Mr. Northcliffe owns a factory downtown in an area that was called Shady Lane. It was a nice place before the war, but now it's known as the Shades because of the hideouts and shady dealings that go on in that area. In my younger days, I took a few odd jobs around there myself. I even lived there for a while. Sitting back down at my desk, I grabbed my notes. There was something else the maid said that didn't sound right. I grabbed a pen and I circled it. We are just getting over one catastrophe and now this. Isn't one tragedy enough? Then she had excused herself from the room. I hadn't read anything in the papers about an accident relating to that family. I wonder if my former partner, Detective Eddie, would know anything that he could tell me. I took my bourbon from the drawer in my desk. I grabbed my glass from the other drawer. I poured a drink and put the bottle back in its resting place in the desk. I will call Detective Eddie tomorrow morning. I looked at the files stacked and leaning at awkward angles on my desk, and then at the two newly acquired oak file cabinets. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes again. Not today. It's Sunday morning, January 4th. I drove to work today, but still walked across the street and grabbed a cup of coffee and a sweet roll from Frank. Overcast and chilly again. It is windier than yesterday, and it's changed directions. I can now smell the fresh-baked bread from the bakery 2 blocks over to the west. I swear that Frank checks the wind direction before he opens his cart in the morning. I didn't have to walk over to the bakery to buy a sweet roll. I need to give Detective Eddie a call. Eddie, this is Billy Nichols. Doing great, Eddie. How about yourself? Good to hear that. I have a question, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer it. Do you know anything about an accident involving the Northcliffes? You know me, Eddie. I won't be running to the papers with any information you give me. Because I have a case involving Mr. Northcliffe's daughter. You do? But it's a long story, and it's still being investigated. You can't give me any information over the phone? That would be fine, Eddie. We could meet this evening. Thanks. See you then. That is a little frustrating. You can't tell me over the phone, so it must be something really big on his end of the investigation. I remember being in his shoes not that long ago. Well, I'm not sure what to do next. Maybe I should just take a drive downtown to Shady Lane and check things out. Welcome back to Radio Static Productions for part 2 of our story, Pennies from Heaven, a William Nichols adventure. So sit back, listen, and enjoy. Now on with our program. I have a funny feeling that I should take a drive downtown and have a look at Mr. Northcliffe's factory, or at least drive by it. Driving through that side of town was like driving down memory lane. 12 years ago, I was kicking around this area myself. 12 years can do a lot to a place that is neglected and forgotten about. Downtown Shady Lane was the place to be. Now the diner is gone, the bright lights, the smell of the food, the nice cars, having fun with friends and good music. The diner is just a parking lot now. There is some vegetation trying to take a hold and make it a little less unsightly. The factory is across the street from where I'm parked. Maybe it's because of the holidays, or maybe because it's the weekend. The factory is quiet. A few lights are on, and there are no cars in the parking lot out in front of it. The painted advertising on the brick wall is faded and chipping away. I can see an image of my younger self walking along the sidewalk in front of me. The vision was interrupted by a young voice that made me jump out of my socks.
Hey, mister, do you have a quarter?
Dang nabbit, Billy. That's how you get yourself killed. You need to be more attentive. You shouldn't sneak up on people like that.
Mister, are you okay in the braid? I asked you 3 times if you had a quarter, and all you did was look at something that isn't there.
Shouldn't a girl like you be in school?
Holiday break. We go back to school on Wednesday. I'm out looking for scrap. I live over there in that apartment building on the 2nd floor.
I'll give you a quarter if you can tell me something about that factory over there.
Mister, it's closed. Now where's my quarter?
You're a very street-smart girl. How old are you?
That, mister, will cost you a dime. My grandma told me if someone is snooping for information, charge them for it, or they can go out and figure it out for themselves. My grandma is gone now, though.
Here's your dime.
Just turned 11.
For another dime, can you tell me when the factory closed?
Sure. It closed the 2nd week of December. You're not from around here, are you, mister?
I used to be. I lived in a small apartment house over on 2nd, and I remember having hamburgers right here in this very spot, when this parking lot was a diner.
That place on 2nd burned down last winter. My grandma lived there. You should have paid me for that extra information.
For a dime, young lady. What do you know about that factory?
Thanks for the dime. I used to sweep the floors, clean the bathrooms there on the weekends and after school. My mom worked there painting furniture. I did odd jobs there just so Mom and the other ladies could keep an eye on me. She's a waitress at Puppy's Bar now. I can't go to work with her anymore. I will give you that little bit of information.
Well, thank you, young lady. Can I ask you your name, or will it cost me?
I don't know. Grandma told me to be careful who I make friends with. So, a quarter if you tell me yours first.
My name is William Nichols. I'm a private investigator. Here's my business card for proof. My address is right here, and my phone number. Do you know where that is? It's just 2 streets over from the bus station.
My name is Donna. I know where the bus station is. Good luck with whatever you're looking for, Gumshoe.
Off she ran and vanished in the vacant lots of the shades. So her mother now works at Puppy's. That is a rough and tumble place. She said nothing about a father. I can't believe it. An 11-year-old street-smart girl just suckered me out of 70 cents for information. I took one last look around. The image of my younger self faded. I got into my car and drove away. I drove back to the office, and when I got out of the car, Frank the vendor from across the street gave me a yell.
Hey, Billy, come over here. Get yourself a cup of coffee. On the house.
At a fast pace, I walked across the street. The wind was blowing. Not hard, but it chilled you to the bones.
Billy, a messenger boy was at your door earlier. I told him I would give you the message, and I gave him the tip that you gave me for the coffee yesterday.
Thank you, Frank. And here, have this for the coffee. And I'll have a cup of chili, too. So I took the message, the coffee, and the cup of chili, with the bunless hot dog that Frank had stuck in the chili, back to the office. I stacked my chili on top of my coffee and opened the door to the office and turned on the light. I sat in one of my new wooden chairs and pulled the other one close and used it for a makeshift table to set my meal and my coffee on. I opened the message and it read, "Billy, I'm on assignment. Can't call. The accident is suspicious. Mrs. Northcliffe and Mr. Baker. From Detective Eddie." Well, thank you, Detective Eddie. Now I'm confused. Who is Mr. Baker? I now have more questions than answers. 1 and 2 are adding up to 5. The clock ticks away and the street lamp outside clicks on as I eat my supper at the office. It's Monday morning, January 5th, and Mr. Northcliffe will be getting his call tomorrow night, and I am no closer to his daughter than I was when I started. Wait, I have a token for a free ride. I will have Mr. Northcliffe's driver come over and pick me up and take me out to the manor again for a look. And I can chat with him in the car on the ride there and during the ride back. I'm going to give him a call. Is this the Northcliffe residence? This is William Nichols. I need a ride to the manor as soon as possible. Thank you. That will be perfect. I finished my breakfast and coffee and wrote down a few notes in the case file and some of the recent accumulated expenses. I got lost in thought about being on that side of town again when I heard, "Mr. Nichols, I'm Winston, your driver." "Winston, sorry. I didn't hear you. Can you have a seat?"
"No, Mr. Nichols. I cannot leave the car attended for that long."
"That's fine, Winston. Let me grab my coat, and I'll follow you out." Winston drove to the manor, and later back to the office. The manor had been empty. Anything that was not nailed down was gone. The house had a booming echo when we talked. The maid had given me a few boxes of Penelope's personal belongings that Winston and the butler took out to the car. I was looking at my notes. The maid had said, "If you find Penelope, those boxes have items that I was able to save from being sold." For the 3 of them, this was their last day of working at the manor. The butler had said that there was 7 staff members working until that accident in December with Mrs. Northcliffe and Mr. Baker, who was the son-in-law. Mr. Northcliffe has not been around much lately, even before Penelope's abduction or the accident. I gave all 3 of them my card, told them to call me if they remember anything else. I asked them about the factory downtown. The 3 of them honestly said, "Rumor has it there were some issues of some sort." The butler had said nothing fancy about the factory was to be discussed in the manor, on the grounds, or in front of the staff. Winston had commented that all the factory business was done at the private factory office. There's a door on the right-hand side of the building, if you go down the alleyway. Winston had said he had never went inside, just picked up people and dropped them off. With all the trouble going on at the manor, all 3 of them were more than happy to be retiring. Jokingly, I couldn't even convince them to come to work for me. I promised I would call each of them when I find out more about Penelope before they saw it in the news. It is said that stress and a bad job situation will make you age faster. When Winston dropped me off, you would swear he looked 10 years younger. He moved with a bit more grace, and he had a smile. It was a happy retirement for him indeed. I was sitting, thinking, and writing at my desk. Do I call Detective Eddie? Give him the information I have? Or will that possibly harm Penelope before I have a chance to find her? Do I tell him about the factory and the hidden office? Wait a minute. Donna. The dark of the evening would soon be cloaking the streets, and the overcast sky made it seem colder and more melancholy than it was. I ran to my car, jumped in, and drove downtown again to the shades. I parked near the apartment where Donna said she lived. There was a group of kids playing street hockey out in front. Donna waved at me from her goalie's position as I pulled up. I stepped out of the vehicle.
What's going on now, Gumshoe? It's getting dark out.
Donna, how much will it cost me for an answer to this question? Did you ever clean inside the private factory office?
Cost you a nickel.
Here you go.
Yes, I did.
I gave her a look of disappointment.
Fine, Gumshoe. Because you're a cool cat and everything, I did clean the office. If it's the office that you might be thinking about, there's only one door in and out of it, and it's in the alley, sort of hidden in all the garbage and stuff. It's nice in there. I've even had to vacuum. It has carpeting. I cleaned up after their meetings.
Donna, can you show me where the office door is?
That, Gumshoe, will cost you $1, 'cause there's an old geezer hanging around there lately.
It's a deal. Donna ran over to another girl, maybe a bit older than herself. They did this whispering thing back and forth between the two of them, the other girl giving me a scowl the whole time. Donna and the other girl walked over.
This is Susie. She will be our lookout, but you owe her a game of street hockey. Is it still a deal?
It's still a deal. We walked across the street, through the parking lot, and picking our way around all the clutter in the alley, Donna showed me where the door was. It had a shiny new lock on it. I tapped on the door. There was a quiet voice of a woman inside.
Hello? Is someone there? If so, help me, please. Please, I'm being held captive. My name is Penelope Baker.
I'm going to get you out. I need to get something to break this lock.
Hey, Dee, someone's coming.
Donna, now listen. It's important. You need to call the cops. Do you know the number?
Yes.
Tell them that Billy Nichols is in trouble and needs Detective Eddie at the North Cliff factory in Shady Lane, and to hurry. Donna and Susie ran off. I crouched behind some wooden pallets and boxes. In the bad lighting, I watched a figure walk down the alley towards the door. The figure unlocked the door, and from the dim light of the open door, I could see it was Mr. Northcliffe. He entered the office and closed the door. Crouched there, I wondered what my next move would be. I listened. I heard Mr. Northcliffe yell, "Sign these papers." I heard Penelope say in a stern voice, "No, she wouldn't." Mr. Northcliffe said that she can just stay locked in there until she does. A moment later, Mr. Northcliffe stomped out, locked the door, and left. I heard a noise behind me and thinking to myself, Billy, you just messed up. And that concludes part 2 of our story. For the conclusion to this, from behind me I heard a noise. I didn't move. It's dark. Maybe they can't see me.
Psst. Yo, Gumshoe. I called the cops. I thought you might need this.
I turned around in my crouched position and saw a dim light from a weak flashlight and Donna holding a rusty crowbar.
It's from my scrap collection. Don't break it, and I want it back when you're done.
It was dark in the alley. Donna held the flashlight while I broke open the lock. Penelope, we need to get you to safety. I don't know who else might be watching. The police should be here soon, and my car is parked nearby.
I want to thank the both of you so much for helping me get out of here. I don't know how I'm going to be able to repay you. Can you help me grab these files and ledgers? They will prove my father's guilt. He has been skimming money from my mother's inherited company for years, and he drained all the personal accounts.
Hey, Dee, the cops are coming.
The police pulled up to the front of the factory as the three of us were walking out of the alley. We were met by Detective Eddie. Billy, I heard you needed help. I do. This is Penelope Northcliffe Baker. She was my kidnapping case. She has information, I believe, that relates to your investigation. She has been locked up in that building for a few days now. Is that so? Billy, I will take her to the station. Do you have everything under control here? Who's this girl? Detective Eddie, this is Donna. She is the one that called for help. She lives here in Shady Lane. Well, thank you, Donna.
You're welcome, Gumshoe. I need my bar back, and you owe me $1. I need to get home. Mom will think I got in trouble if the neighbors are watching and see the cop cars here.
I gave Donna her crowbar and $1.50 for Susie and an IOU on a street hockey game. Donna and Susie ran off. Penelope, do you need medical attention? Penelope just shook her head no.
I'm just glad this is over.
I watched as they drove off. As I walked back to my car under the faint flickering light of one of the few remaining street lamps, I got into my car and looked over at the factory. I'm glad this is over. I only have one loose end. Mr. Raymond Northcliffe. He owes me an explanation, my money, and some jail time. Hunched over my steering wheel, I noticed a shadow of a figure in one of the lit windows in the factory. Could Mr. Northcliffe be hiding in the factory? Was he staying there while Penelope was locked in that office? I grabbed my flashlight, checked that it worked, and made my way to the factory. The front door was unlocked. I quietly entered. I noticed that to my right there was a room with light coming from a crack underneath the door. The rest of the factory floor was empty and dark. I slowly approached the door and heard footsteps pacing, and a voice was muttering. It was indeed Mr. Northcliffe's voice. I caught a few words. Stupid girl, stubborn, end up like her mother. Beneficiary papers. Attorney. I will have nothing. I was getting angry at what I was hearing, but I knew I had to keep my head on straight. With self-confidence and a cool head, I opened the door. Mr. Northcliffe, I've found Penelope. You were the one holding her for ransom as an excuse to clean out and sell all the assets at the manor. Mr. Northcliffe made a move to get around the desk, and that's when I lunged. Pinned him against the desk, pulled out my .38 and held it right in front of his face. His eyes were the size of dinner plates. He stuttered for me not to kill him, and I told him that he deserved something much worse than death for what he did to his own daughter. You took away her mother, her husband, and her home. You. He looked at me totally defeated. I put my pistol away, grabbed him by the shirt, and led him out the door and put him into my car. On the way to the station, he babbled about how Penelope was supposed to be in the car with her mother. Winston also knew too much about the private office and who had been there, so he had to go too. All three were supposed to be killed in the wreck. He was angry that his wife was better at the business than he was, and his daughter Penelope was turning out to be the same way. I did one bad business deal to cover another. Bad business deal, he said. It just got out of control. I said nothing. I arrived at the police station and sat Mr. Northcliffe at Detective Eddie's desk, who looked up at me and smiled. I felt a bit sorry for Detective Eddie at that moment. I knew he was going to have a late night. I could go home, relax, and try to get some sleep. I walked out. That's when I passed the lieutenant's office and saw Penelope sitting, looking crestfallen, tired. She was holding a glass of water. I tapped on the already open door, and she looked up. Do you mind if I sit down? I didn't get a chance to properly introduce myself. I'm William Nichols. I'm a private investigator. My friends call me Billy.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Nichols. For a moment there, I thought your name might have been Gumshoe. Mr. Nichols, I have lost everything. My family is gone. My home is gone. My father borrowed against my mother's life insurance policy, like grabbing pennies from heaven. My own father has destroyed everything. All I have left is what is in these two.
Your maid was able to box up some of your personal belongings. I have them out in my car. I know of a rooming house that has an opening. It's nothing fancy, but it's very clean, it's quiet, and cheap. I could drive you there. I need to stop by my office and make a few calls anyway. To 3 people that are very concerned about you, and I promised them I would. Did you get something to eat?
Yes, I had some water and half a sandwich. I'm really not in the mood for eating, but I need employment to be able to afford a room.
I know of a private investigating service that is looking for a secretary. Something about a New Year's resolution. We left the station and went to my office. Penelope looked around, ran her finger across the dirty window pane, and looked out at the street while I made some late-night phone calls. One call was to the rooming house where I told the friendly Mr. and Mrs. Codworth the situation. Then I called Winston and the butler. When I called the maid, I gave the phone to Penelope and walked outside. There was a real bite to the cold evening air. I knew the maid was more of a friend to Penelope than just household staff. After the call, Penelope stepped outside and joined me. I pointed to the blue sign of the rooming house off in the distance.
Mr. Nichols, I would really like to start working as soon as possible if that is all right with you. I want to keep my mind off of everything that has happened.
I knew that feeling all too well. How about the day after tomorrow? 8 a.m. It will give you time to get settled in, and I need to go out and buy you a desk.
I will be here at 8 a.m.
I drove to the rooming house where Mr. and Mrs. Codworth were waiting. Mr. Codworth helped with the boxes, and the missus took Penelope to her room and then shooed me out the door. I told them that Penelope will be employed by me starting on Wednesday. Tuesday morning, Detective Eddie called me and I had to go to the station and give them a statement. Mr. Raymond Northcliffe will be going away for a long time. According to Detective Eddie, when he spoke with the Northcliffe attorneys, Miss Penelope Baker, she has nothing. I did, however, find a desk, comfortable office chair, and supplies for my new employee. It's Wednesday morning, January the 7th. Penelope walks in. She was looking rested and cheerful. She eyes the empty desk in the corner, the dirty window, and the dingy hardwood floor, the stacks of files on my desk.
Mr. Nichols, I hardly know you, and you have done so much for me. What can I do to repay you?
Well, Miss Baker, you can be the best secretary that I have ever had.
You can call me Penny. My maid always called me Penny, and I will try my best, Mr. Nichols. How many secretaries have you had?
Well, you're the first.
Well, then, where do you want me to start?
I pointed to the files on the desk and smiled. Penny went straight to work, with a proficiency like she had been a secretary all her life. My New Year's resolution was to make this office look more professional, and with Penny's help, I think that will get accomplished. And that's the end of our story, Pennies from Heaven. Let us know in the comments below if you want us to continue on with another case from Billy Nichols, private investigator, or if you want us to mix it up. We do have some other storylines that we have put together. So, once again, thanks for listening. Drop us a comment. Please remember to give it a thumbs up if you enjoy what we're doing. Subscribe, share, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you. This now ends our broadcast day.